All right, hello friends. We are going to do a real quick quilted heart shape mug rug. I don't have a tutorial for the quilted one, so I'm going to do this one real quick so you can see how it goes together. Honestly, it's really quick and easy. Comes out like this. So it is an envelope back. So this back will be opening. I'll have to end up closing this up either by hand stitching, which sounds terrible. Most likely I will use a fusible hem tape to seal that closed. Or you can leave it open, it's up to you, but this is what it looks like. I'm doing the 8x12 version in my hoop. You'll need stabilizer. I'm gonna use cutaway here, and you will need some batting or some fleece, even just something to give your mug rug some loft, so it's not just kind of a flimsy piece of fabric together. And then you're gonna need 3 different fabrics, cut in various sizes. So I'm going to go about a little over 4 inches wide on mine. My first piece in the middle is going to be the biggest piece here. So I've got this cut about 4.5 inches and about 9.5 inches long. You'll see when you go, you can kind of measure how much you need as you go. So you can use up scraps, whatever on this. So, and 2 other pieces that are going to be smaller than the first. They're each going to be about 4 inches, or sorry, 4.5, 5 inches wide for the 8x12. And then as I'm going, I use shorter pieces. So you'll see, you can kind of measure as you go because it'll stitch out for you, so you'll get to see. But the first step we're going to do is going to be stitching directly on our stabilizer. So I've got my stabilizer and my hoop, my design ready to go, and I'm just going to hit go, and we are going to get rocking and rolling with just our placement stitches. And this is going to show us where to place our batting. So for our step 2, we're going to take our batting or our fleece, and we are just going to lay this down, making sure that we cover all of those stitches. And once this is down in place, I'm just going to run the next step to tack down that batting. So we've got our batting tack down. Our next step is going to be our placement for our center. So if you've done quilted mug rugs before, this might be a little different from what you're used to. Typically you're going to go from one side to the other, but just to kind of an introductory, if you haven't done quilting before, this is an easy way to do it. So we're actually going to do the center first on mine. So we are going to go ahead and run that placement stitch. And this is just going to be that center portion. So this portion here of the heart is what we're stitching now. So just our placement for that. One thing I didn't mention, I have backed the back of my fabrics with a fusible woven interfacing, and that kind of just gives your fabric a little more heft to it. So if you have issues when you're doing Mugrugs with if you're using quilting cotton and your fabric kind of gets kind of puckery, or you don't like it, it's not as crisp as you want, this is a good kind of fix for that, is to interface the back of your fabric to give it a little more depth to it. So that way it'll be nice, crisp, you won't have the same amount of puckers. All right, so now I have my center fabric here, and I'm gonna lay that down. You can see here to here. There's my placement stitches. I'm just gonna lay this down right side up over top, making sure that I am covering all of my stitches there. And I've got way more fabric than I need here, but it's easier to take away than it is to add. And I have all these scraps sitting around, so. Make sure it stitches down nice and smooth for you. So unlike an applique, I am not going to be worried when this step finished about cutting away this excess. It's not going to be a big deal. So we're actually going to leave the excess around. You can trim it if you want to. It's just kind of an unnecessary step. So if you want, you can trim around it, but it's just not necessary. It's just one layer of fabric. All right, so now we're getting ready to add our first quilted piece, so to speak. So what we're going to do here is take our first piece of fabric, and we are going to lay this down. Our heart is going to stitch this piece next. Okay, so this piece here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fabric I have cut for that, and I'm going to lay this right side down where this edge here is just over this line of stitching. Okay, making sure that it covers everything, and I'm going to lay it down so it's just over it. So I want to make sure that this gets stitched. It's going to stitch right on top here. Make sure that it's going to get covered. Make sure I'm covering all the areas here. It doesn't need to be perfect, but just make sure that the edge of your fabric goes past that line of stitching, so it's going to get caught and tacked down. So once I have that in place, I'm just going to run the next step. And this is going to tack down this. I was cutting it kind of close with that piece, but we made it. All right, so here's where the quilting kind of begins. So I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to flip it open now. And I'm just kind of going to give it a little finger press and just push it down nice and smooth. So it's folded over. So now we are right side up. You don't see that seam. It's hidden there under the fabric. And I'm going to run our next step to tack this down in place. It's going to run that quilted edge here, this line of stitching. Just don't get your finger stitched, but you do want to kind of keep it smooth. If you really want to be precise with it, you could take up your hoop off your machine and go hit it real quick with an iron to make sure that it's nice and crisp folded down. But honestly, I find a finger press usually is going to work just fine. And now it's going to go around the edge, just to tack down your fabric here so it's not going to get caught on you later. I'm not pinning or anything, I'm just kind of making sure that it's going to get caught up nice and smooth. There we go. So it's going to continue to tacking that around, double stitch around. All right, so now we're ready to add our third piece here. So I have got my fabric, and this time I'm going to be going on the inside of this line. So I want to make sure that my fabric is right side down and my one edge goes just over this line of stitching here this way. So what happens is once we get it stitched down, we're going to open it towards the right side of your heart. So get that down. Make sure that all that line of stitching is covered. It's stitching past just a little bit so it catches. Center that there. And then I'm going to run the next step just to tack that down. All right, and just like the first one, I'm gonna bring this, I'm gonna open it up, I'm gonna give it a little finger press here so it's nice and smooth, and it's gonna run a line of stitch right down here, and then around the edges just to tack it down. So nice and smooth, here we go. And after this tack's done, we're ready to add our backing fabric. All right, so with an envelope back, you want each piece of fabric to be roughly the size of your finished mug rug. But you're gonna have two pieces of that, and you're gonna take and you are gonna press down one raw edge towards the back on each thing. So each of the long sides, we're gonna press down towards the back. So to do this, all we do is take our backing fabric and we're gonna put it right side down against our heart on our mug rug. Sorry, I'm knocking the camera here. And I wanna try and adjust this edge so that the top of this edge here kind of falls at the widest part of the heart, just to give us more of an area to turn. If we start putting it down here near the bottom, once we stitch it up, we're gonna have a much smaller area to turn. So I like to try and get it where it's lined up with roughly the widest part of the heart. I'm gonna take my second piece and I'm gonna also go down right side up, and I'm just gonna lay it so it overlaps that piece by just a little bit, okay? So it's gonna be like this. So once we got that, I'm gonna just run the next step of the design. And this is gonna be stitching down our backing. And with this, your machine may or may not kind of balk at this little lip of fabric here where it's folded over. So I just have to keep an eye. I have my little, I don't know what this thing is called, just to kind of keep it smushed as we go. If I need to, I will hit that stop button, but we are good, and adjust my foot if I need to, but we're good on that side. I'm just using this to kind of help keep the fabric straight since it didn't hit anything. You can if you want to, totally up to you. I'm just usually a little too lazy for pins. But this little tool is safer than me sticking my fingers in there, so. And again, as we get over here, your machine might want to pick up that edge and drag it. I like to keep my tool to kind of hold it down. If I need to, I will stop the machine and adjust. Let's see what I need to do here. Yep, see how it's catching right there? So I'm going to stop. I'm going to lift my foot up, and I'm just going to push it under before I go any farther. And there we go. Then it didn't get caught. So just make sure if you're doing envelope side, you kind of keep an eye on that, because you don't want to come back to a mess of your fabric being all twisted and going under there. All right, so I pulled it out of my hoop. Now all we have to do is trim this up and turn it. So get your good scissors. You're gonna cut all the excess away, a 1/4 inch or so, 1/8 of an inch or so away from your line of stitching. And the tip here is that last line of stitching is a little bit smaller. So cut from your fabric side so you can see a little better where you need to cut. So you can get nice and close to that last line of stitch without actually cutting into those stitches. So I'm going to trim around here. I'm going to come back to that top of the heart in a second, but continue trimming around. And I missed some stabilizer here. It's always hard when you've got more fabric kind of bunching up on you. So sometimes I do a rough cut and then come back in and clean up. So if you need to go make a couple passes around to get it nice and even and nice and close, that's fine too. All right, so here at the top of this heart here, and those of you that sew will know this, but when you have this little piece here, which I need to trim that closer right there, my goodness. You always want to clip into your curves like that. So I'm gonna get my kindergartner skills here cutting. All right, so here on this top of this corner, I want you to clip into it as close as you can get without actually cutting into those stitches. So if you need to get smaller scissors to do that safely, do that, but position them in and get as close as you can without cutting those stitches open. And that's gonna help keep you from puckering when you turn this. And I'm just gonna clip a little extra out there so I don't have fabric kind of puckering on me. But yeah, get nice and in there. Again, clip as close as you can to that line of stitches without actually cutting into the stitches. And then we turn it. And if you haven't made a Mugrug before, they kind of look messy when you first turn. That's okay. It's nothing a good iron can't fix. You can give it a good press and smooth everything out. I want to get all my edges turned here. And see, it's kind of messy right here. That is fine because we can press it. Right now, this is in dire need of a good press, but that's okay. So, but that is how we do it. So here is our front. It'll look better after I hit it with the iron. Here's our front, and here is our back. Where is my other one that I lost already that I made earlier? I can't keep anything straight anymore. Oh, no, here it is. So after it's pressed, it's gonna look like this. Here is the front, And here is the back. You can smooth out a little more iron if you want it to, but that's it. They're super quick. They're super easy. They're great for using up scraps. So if you've got a lot of fabric scraps around, this is a great way to use them up. And they're just fun for Valentine's Day. So hope you found that helpful. Bye.